listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and have your work build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
Hello, and welcome to the Author Inside You podcast. I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Today, our guest is Jackie D., author of Infiltration. Jackie lives in central Pennsylvania with her wife and many furry friends. She's a Navy veteran and served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Welcome, Jackie. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Matt and Leah.
Thank you for coming in and talking to us. So, Jackie, can you tell us about your first book?
The first book that I wrote, Infiltration, it was book one of the After Dark series. It came out in December of 2015, and it focuses on, it's an LGBT kind of romance and action novel. It focuses on a Marine who has been injured and is now being reassigned, and she's overseeing some hand-to-hand combat training at a CIA facility where, unbeknownst to her at the time, a terrorist attack has been plotted to kind of take over the system and find out some inside secrets. And then I'm not going to give anything away, but that's what book one focuses on. And then Pursuit, the sequel to it, actually just came out last week, and it's an ongoing endeavor trying to still locate the same terrorist organization that was responsible for the first attack. And this time they've upped the stakes a little bit and are actually going after the president and vice president. And then the third installment will be out probably in December of 2018.
Wow.
Congratulations on your second release.
Well,
and I have Land's End is a different one that came out last year, and then I also have Lucy's Chance that comes out this year.
Wow, you are busy.
I am.
Well, could you draw from your own military experiences for the book?
I did to some extent, not wholeheartedly. The main character in the book, they struggle a bit with PTSD, and I have not personally endured that, but I do know people who have. Yes, thankfully, but I do think it is an under-discussed topic, so I did want to make sure that I included that in there, so people realize that, you only hear about PTSD cases when they get to the point that something incredibly extreme happens, and I don't think most people realize how much it actually affects everyday life, even if they are able to maintain some amount of normalcy throughout their time afterward.
So what made you decide to start writing?
I had finished my my master's degree, and I suddenly had a tremendous amount of time on my hands, and I started consuming books at kind of a pretty ridiculous rate. I was reading about 3 to 5 a week, and spending a tremendous amount of money. And I'd always enjoyed writing, but I never considered it to be something that I would actually be able to do. So I decided that I would turn one of my little short stories that I played with into an actual novel and send it in and just see what happened. I figured I didn't have anything to lose. I already had a full-time job. It wasn't going to replace that, but just to see if other people would be interested in my stories and ideas, and luckily they were. So. And
how did you go about submitting it?
I read predominantly books from Bold Strokes. In the LGBT genre, there aren't a tremendous amount of publishers that publish works for the LGBT community. So they are the ones that you do find, you kind of hold on to them. So they had a little part down at the bottom of their website that just said accepting submissions. And I figured I didn't have anything to lose. And they said it would take about 12 weeks to get back to me. And I think it was 12 weeks to the day.
That must have been long 12 weeks, huh?
Did they get it?
Yeah. Well, they had emailed me saying that they got it, but 12 weeks to the day. And I was actually on vacation in Cabo San Lucas when I found out that they were going to be publishing my book and that they wanted to pick it up. So that was, yeah, exactly.
That's nice being on vacation when you hear that. That's fantastic.
It absolutely was. I celebrated accordingly.
Good.
So now I have a question. Certain publishers you think will not publish?
I don't think it's that they won't. We are a really niche market because, I mean, we only make up about 10% of the population. So the big publishers, they're very, it's few and far between that stories that have main characters that focus on romantic relationships that are gay get published by, Penguin or Random House, or you can. It does happen, but probably have a better shot of winning the lottery.
Wow, so that's interesting.
Yeah, there are publishers out there that that this is what they do. Okay. So it's Bold Strokes Books, Bella Books. I'm sure I'm missing one or two others, but that's who I'm familiar with. So. And
then when you had your first book published, then you're with the same publisher for the other books?
I am. I'm very, very lucky. Radcliffe, who's actually our publisher, is one of the big names in LGBT literature, and she has something like 45, 48 books out. I honestly don't know, because she puts out like 2 or 3 a year, and she started her own publishing company, and they're very good to us. We have editors that don't just rip apart your stories. They actually go through with you and help you work with them and make them truly better. And they're very conscientious. We have some of the biggest royalty percentages of anyone in the market. So yeah, I unless something absolutely horrific happened, I would never leave Bold Strokes.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. So when you're communicating with them, are you communicating by phone or through email?
Email, Skype, we use a lot. And then that's pretty much the extent of it. We have a lot of events that we get together for, and we get to see each other for. A lot of us go out to Women's Week in Provincetown, and then we do a bunch of prides with some of the other authors. I just did a signing with a few others up in Rehoboth. We've done readings at colleges and stuff. So we do have the ability to communicate back and forth. But when it comes to actually editing and working on the stories and doing contracts and book proposals, it's all done through Skype and email. Okay, well, it sounds like a pretty neat group that through your publishing company, you're doing these outside activities, and that's pretty cool, like a family. Yeah, it is. It really is. You get to know the people, I guess. You really do, and because we are such a niche market, our readers, and I'm sure everybody says this, but our readers are incredibly devoted, and they buy everything that we do, and they show up for all of our readings, and they're very, very supportive, because there isn't a lot of other entities out there that produce this kind of work. Wow, that's pretty neat.
And so how do you find places to do a reading? So if somebody's listening to our podcast and they just recently published a book, how do you how do you go about finding a place that will allow you to come in and do a reading, and how do you promote it?
I get contacted typically. The publishing house will say, we have this and this going on. There's some openings here. Who wants to go to it? Who wants to participate? But you can also contact your local bookstores and, tell them my book's coming out on such and such a date. I would love to be able to do a reading there. I'll hang out and do some signings. I'll sign a few books for you to keep at the store to sell. You can also contact a lot of times colleges when they have their creative writing groups or colleges. Yeah, we haven't heard that. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Excellent idea that you come and speak to a literature class.
Mm-hmm. And you could also do even open mic nights, depending if people do. You don't want to go to a comedy open mic night.
That could be a rough crowd.
You can find one that's a little bit more artsy. They'll let you do it. And then if it is in the LGBT genre, a lot of LGBT centers, youth centers and stuff, they want people to give these kids to see something that, it does get better. You can turn it. There is a support group out there,
Great.
Right.
Come
You're
and
not
ask
alone.
questions to people.
So while you were writing the book, to go back, did you have writer's block? Did you have an outline? How did you come up with your idea? And
all the time. I live in a complete state of writer's block until I don't, Everyone does it a little bit differently. I typically, so when we have to turn in a proposal to to my publishing house, you have to come up with an outline beforehand anyway, because before they contract you, they want to get an idea. Plus, they put you on a schedule. They don't want 4 military books coming out the same month. Mm-hmm. So they kind of schedule you out and they work with you on an outline. And then I work off whiteboards. I have whiteboards up all over my office, and I put up my outline there. And then as ideas come to me, I put them up there. I draw out plot arcs. So I draw on a piece of paper, like, here's how I know I want it to begin. Here's how I know I want it to end. And now I need to fill in the middle parts. I don't always write linear either. A lot of authors will write straight through. If I come up with a really good chapter or scene, I write that and then write backwards or forwards how to get there. I think people get too caught up in this is how I have to do it. And that's not how creativity works. Infiltration, when I wrote that, it actually started as a dream that I had. And I got up and I wrote that down, and then it kind of built from there. And the actual part that I had the dream about didn't even make it in the book.
Oh, wow.
That's funny.
I mean, a version of it did, but not exactly how I had originally envisioned it. So some people work off note cards. There's note cards pasted all over their office. But I think the most important thing is get it written down somewhere. Even if you have an idea, read it into your voice recorder on your phone, write it down, and then you can kind of build and go off from those chapters or those scenes, or even just a thought that you have. So, yeah, creativity works differently for everyone. There's no wrong way or right way to do it, as long as you're getting your thoughts down so that you can come back to them.
You made a good point about how you don't have to do it all in a straight line, how you can jump around, and if you have a good idea for a certain scene or a certain part of a chapter, that you can do that. That's a great idea, because I think a lot of people probably just think, oh my gosh, I've got to do the entire book, and after this happens, this has to happen. And yes, that's a great idea.
It also helps a lot with writer's block. Sometimes, especially when you're writing sequels or if you're writing installments that are going to be more than 2 or 3 or whatever, if you can kind of picture them, if you can't get past a certain scene, take a minute. And my editor actually taught me this trip when I got really stuck in Pursuit, because I wanted to close up some plot gaps while still leaving enough open for the third. And she said, open up an entirely different screen on your computer and write Brooke and Tyler 15 years from now, and spend 20 minutes doing it. And once you see where you want them to be 20 years from now or 15 years from now or whatever it is, then come back and start the building blocks of going there. Yeah. So if you can take yourself outside of it and write something much further in the future using the same characters, and maybe you want to write 10 years prior, you can kind of get some of those personality traits established to help you get through your writer's block. Great idea.
So what are you doing to promote your book on social media, or your books, excuse me?
Well, our publishing house releases some stuff on Facebook, and they do it on Twitter and Pinterest, and I don't know if I'm saying that right. I don't use Pinterest or whatever it's called. And then they'll do myself and about 10 other authors will be at Women's Week. We'll do 5 or 6 readings, and then we'll do 5 or 6 signings, and they'll do an early release of Lucy's Chance there so people can get it. I do giveaways on our podcast.
Tell us about your podcast.
My best friends and I do a podcast called The Weekly Wind Down. I am the token lesbian on the show. The rest of them are straight. And we talk about everything from politics to current events to parenting to LGBT issues to super boring stuff like healthcare. We just covered why participation trophies should go away. We talk about kind of whatever we're thinking about, and we do it under the ruse of reviewing wine. So usually by the end, everyone likes what they're drinking because we've been drinking it for an hour, and it's just...
Everybody's happy. I'll download a few episodes tonight and listen to it tomorrow on the way to work.
There you go. We cuss a lot. Just
Sometimes I feel that, myself included, that you're... worry about what other people are going to think too much. Like someone's going to say, oh, why are you doing that? That's stupid. You can't do it, or that's not good. You know what I mean? So did you have any of those self-doubts, or people telling you maybe this isn't such a good idea?
I was terrified. You work on these books for so long, and you pour kind of your heart into it, and then the first time I have no fear of speaking in public. Part of my job is I work for the government. I'm constantly in front of people talking, and with the first time I was going to do a reading of Infiltration, I almost threw up, because it was going to be the first time I was really opening myself up to critiques about it and people's insights and whether or not they liked it. And I just had to keep telling myself, if it was good enough to get published, some people
Right.
are going to like it,
True.
and some people aren't. And that's okay. Reviewers on the internet can be very, very harsh. But that's not the majority of them. The majority of people are going to like your book. Your publisher believed in you. My friends and family were really wonderful.
Oh, good.
My mother, who is an amazing person, she, it goes through, I write the book, it goes through one editor, a story edit, and then it goes to a grammar editor, because they don't use the same one, because people get married to stories and don't see mistakes anymore.
Good idea.
Good point.
Yeah, and then after that, it goes to my mom, and she still finds, mistakes. So,
How do moms do that?
yeah, so she's but the thing that if you're writing books for other people, you're doing it wrong. You have to write books. I wrote Infiltration because I wrote a story that I would want to read, and that's what you should be writing for. And other people are going to enjoy it, and some aren't. But if you have to be willing to put yourself out there if you want your work to be appreciated, and people will appreciate it. But it is a scary thing, and it's completely normal to feel that way. When Pursuit came out, I was really nervous about it. I don't know why. I think because I wrote it in the middle. I moved across the country. I started a new job. We got married. Like, I was doing all these things, and I felt like I hadn't put the attention into it that I had put into Land's End and Infiltration. But it's getting the best reviews of any of the books that I've written so far. So I don't know how that happened.
Wow. So you were more nervous with the third book that you wrote and having that published than you were with your first book.
Yeah, and I think. I obviously worked on it and I put time into it, but I think I wasn't caught up so much in it because I had so many other things going on that it ended up being some of my best writing so far. So you can't overthink. I mean, when you write, it's a creative essence in you, and most people write because they feel compelled to, that they have to. They have these voices that talk to them, not in the we're going to lock you up kind of way.
Right,
but
Right. Not those voices.
Stories that need to be told, and if you feel compelled to write, you have to. You just have to, and you shouldn't be so worried about how people judge your creativity, because there is no right or wrong.
So, Jackie, what's the best advice you can give fellow authors who are working on their first book?
You have to write. You have to keep writing. You have to write when you don't want to write. And you have to do it some more. It's a lot of people think that, you should only write when the mood strikes you, or when you don't have writer's block or whatever. You have to be disciplined about it. You have to set aside a certain amount of time, whether or not you can do it every day. Not everyone's schedules allow that. But even if it's, 15 minutes in the morning, and it doesn't always have to be the story that you're working on, just write to write, because you will become better at it. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, read, your favorite authors and read them over again. See how they use vocabulary, see how they transfer verbs, see how they different dialogues work, and what you appreciate and what you like. There's nothing worse than being bored in a book, and sometimes that can happen if you're forcing yourself to drag a story on and on and on. But it's what really kills most writers is the discipline to actually sit down and do it. And I wish I had utilized them more earlier on, but I was too scared that my writing wasn't going to be good enough, or people weren't going to like it. But use beta readers, send them to people that enjoy reading and enjoy writing, and get their honest feedback from it. But you have to be willing to get honest feedback from it.
Right. It might not all be positive, but it'll be honest.
Yeah. Right? and don't be, be okay with taking criticism, because the people who care about you and the people that want to see you succeed, they're only going to tell you things to help you get better. And don't be afraid to, if you want to start seeing if people are interested in your work, start a blog, start writing, start getting people's feedback. it's just like any other skill you have. The only way you get better at it is to do it over and over and over again. So I'm on my 4th book now. I just started writing my 5th, and I'm still getting better, and I still have a lot to learn. I just reread Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale about 2 months ago, and I found myself completely blown away by the way she, describes different scenes and her mastery of the English language. And it's okay to feel like that. Not everyone's going to be Margaret Atwood, but not everyone wants to read Margaret Atwood either. Mm-hmm. So just write what you want to read and just keep writing.
Well, that is all wonderful advice. Thank you.
So beta readers, how did you find beta readers?
I made my friends and family suffer through it until I actually, when you get signed on with a publishing house and you meet other people, you'll beta read for each other. People will send stuff to me if they have a military component because they want to make sure they're doing it accurately, or if they're missing something, or if the language is the same. I'll send it to people who, like in Lucy's Chance, one of the main characters is a reporter, and one of the women who writes for us is an editor of a newspaper. So I send it to her to make sure I got everything correct. And, I personally don't ever want to misrepresent anybody.
Sure.
So, and typically, the next book I'm writing, it's actually going to involve a bit of a ghost hunting theme to it. And I called someone who I work in Gettysburg, and I actually called someone who does that for a living, and I'm going to go follow them around. And
oh, that's good.
So if you tell people you're writing a book, they usually want to be part of it. So
there's
just
people willing to help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ask. The worst thing someone's going to tell you is no.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that is going to be the worst answer you're going to get. And even if if people only have time to read, maybe you've spent your entire life working on this manuscript and it's 8,000 pages. No one wants to read that. No, literally no one.
Right.
So see if someone will read a chapter for you, and if they have questions, or if you're, you want to make sure you're making something clear in a sentence or an entire section, ask people if they can send you stuff. I have people send me things all the time to clarify. So just don't be afraid to ask. People are out there who want to help you.
Excellent. Well, speaking of which, how's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
You can reach me on my email, which is Jackie, JACKIE _D 1981 at yahoo.com. I'm also on Twitter. It's JDWYER 81, and then I'm also on Facebook under Jackie D.
Okay, excellent. I'll put those in the show notes, so we'll have those for everyone to click on that.
Oh, and what about purchasing your book?
My books are actually available at Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, but I always try to push buying them from Bold Strokes because it does do better for the publishing company, and you can get them. Usually they're offering 20% off to buyers, so you can actually get them as cheap as you can from Amazon or from Barnes & Noble, but it does support all of the authors directly, and they don't have to split the share with the other conglomerates.
Oh.
So, and believe it or not, people find this hard to believe, authors don't make a ton of money. So
that's what we keep hearing.
Yeah. I thought Stephen King made a lot of money.
Yeah,
yeah, not everyone's Stephen King. Robert Patterson, what's his name? James Patterson. Yeah. It takes a while to get to that point.
Yeah,
So.
it does. Well, Jackie, thank you very much for joining us today. We had a great time chatting with you about your books. You've been very informative. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
When you get a chance, check us out on Facebook, or you can always find us on theauthorinside.you.com.
Until next time.
Right on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.